Today, welcome to Data Points. My name is Ryan, and I'm the president of Pinpoint Guam and your host. And today we're going to meet with Chirag Bhojwani, and he is the regional director of public policy at UOG and also a graduate of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs program with the Taiwanese government. I probably stomped all over that, so sorry, Chirag, but he gets it right in the intro. But while Chirag is heavily credentialed, he also has a lot of insight because he's been a journalist. He consults for several senators, and he was the chief of staff for the speaker, Tina Munya-Barnes, when she was speaker. So I invite you to really listen to this one and drill down on the insight that he brings to bear, and you'll be glad you did. And you'll be glad you subscribed, shared, and followed any of our social media channels. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. Please give us a listen, watch, share, and tune in. Today, and I'm here with Chirag Bhojwani. Chirag, tell me what you do.
Today, Ryan. My name is Chirag Bhojwani. I'm the director for the Regional Center for Public Policy at the University of Guam. I'm also instructor for Public Administration and Legal Studies at the School of Business and Public Admin.
Wow, now that we got that out of the way. Chirag is also a friend of mine and actually a pretty brilliant guy. And he's been in politics for a long time. You've been a journalist. You're an actual journalist on Data Points. That's a new thing.
Yeah.
That's a welcome.
A couple careers ago, but yes.
Thanks for raising the bar. I appreciate it, right? But one of the reasons I asked you to come on is just because you have a dynamic understanding of the market and you're very opinionated and you have your own ideas in terms of like what will work and what won't work. And I'm very interested in hearing what you have to say. And specifically, we were having conversations around data and decisioning and the lack thereof in the market and just like what ideas are we pursuing and why. And one of the things that is at issue is defining the problem. And so in defining the problem, from your seat in public policy and academia, what do you believe are the most systemic policy constraints that are holding back Guam?
That's a great question. I think that's a multi-million-dollar question. And I've been with the legislature for 3 terms now. I left as chief of staff. I am hired as a consultant now for a few senators. But one thing that I've realized that the government of Guam specifically is we do a lot of work in silos where agencies simply just don't talk to each other. And, when you try to innovate and implement new change, the general response you get is, well, this is how we've been doing it for so long. You look at the Guam financial management system that was recently brought online, just getting that up and running. If it runs the way it's supposed to run, it should solve a lot of our issues that we have with getting GovGuam audits to come out on time. But here we are a year and a half into the implementation. We're still trying to close the books on fiscal year 2024. And it's just because this is how we've been doing it for so long. I listened to a podcast your podcast where you had a guest come in and said he can build a house in 6 months, but permitting takes way longer than that. Imagine if we had a platform where developers can go in and submit their building permit application to one place, and then it goes to all the different GovGuam agencies at the same time. Right now, you got to get cleared from one agency, then the paperwork goes to another agency, and so on and so forth. If we can do it all simultaneously, that would make things move a lot faster. Given everything that's going on in the region, from all the people in academia I've spoken to, foreign investors even that I've run into through the different fellowship programs that I've been on, there's definitely an interest to invest in Guam, but their biggest fear is the government. It took us a long time I was just talking to a director the other day, tax refunds, to get the tax refunds to go through this automated process where you print the check and it seals the envelope. There apparently was some pushback because they just really enjoyed doing it the manual way, where somebody's job was just to seal the envelopes, and that's what they want to do. So we just got to keep up with the advances in technology, and one of the bills that I worked on with at the time Speaker Tina Munya-Barnes, we try to implement robotic process automation.
Sure.
And we we had 3 case studies with a company that did it for pretty much every state throughout the country, Korea and Singapore. Pretty much take a lot of these outdated processes and automate them. They did a pilot project at GPA, and I think they spent like a couple $1,000, and the ROI was almost 900%. If we can do that government wide, I think it would help move things along on this island.
Yeah, 100%. And I've been entrenched with GPA as they've rolled out that RPA and just seen it as proof positive that that concept can work, and the downstream effects in terms of efficiency and systems that comes as a result. But like you say, it's siloed. Like any direct benefit is siloed in that one agency. And that's a common theme that we're seeing is everybody's siloed. And one of the advantages that you have with research in academia is you're not necessarily siloed. You can go and research and come to solutions, but how can you lead? How can a research center like yours lead agencies to become more agile and data driven?
Well, that's a good question. Right now, we're working with the Guam Regional Transit Authority. They've received a grant. Essentially, we have to do some data collection for them, and if we complete that for them, they get more buses funded by the federal government. We hope the goal of RCPP, a Regional Center for Public Policy, is to be able to step in for GovGuam agencies and kind of do a lot of this work for these agencies. But also, we have a pipeline of students. They can spend time with the research center, get an internship credit, get some work experience, and essentially you have students that are taking what they're learning in the classroom and able to apply it into real world scenarios. And it's a win-win. For the university at the end of the day. If our students are able to get jobs in their fields, it helps us with our accreditation, but also for the students and even for the government. You have somebody that instead of paying to train them, they're already doing this work in an academic setting, supervised by the different professors we have at the university. When they get out of the university, they have that diploma. The agency also benefits because now in turn you have an individual who knows what they're doing, and they're ready to jump in and do what they need to do. We're right now in the final stages of just putting ink to paper and sign off on contracts, and it's being reviewed by the AG's office, and we're optimistic we can get that up and running. On the other hand, we've had interest from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs from Taiwan. They want to see how we can do greater exchanges between Guam and Taiwan and the different universities there. I'm optimistic to see how we can learn from Taiwan. Taiwan's a island nation. Guam is a U.S. territory. They face a lot of similar challenges. At the same time, there's a lot of data out there that we can use, and there's no one-size-fits-all solution. But there are ways where we can innovate. Take, for example, Amazon. Amazon did a pilot project with the state of Oklahoma for procurement. If you want to do any business with the government, you go on the separate Amazon platform where local businesses in Oklahoma can, upload. These are the items that they sell. These are the services they provide. And then Amazon automatically on the back end just ensures all right, you're a local business, you are the lowest bidder, and then individuals who are authorized to make purchases government-wide are able to buy stuff right away. Vendors like it because as soon as that order's placed, Amazon is fronting the money to the vendor. They get paid right away. And then at the end of 30, 60, 90 days, Amazon and the state of Oklahoma settle, the bill.
Sure.
Vendors like it. That's more money circulating in the local economy. There's different ways where we can do it, and I hope with the center, I'm able to explore all these different options.
Great. So earlier on, you talked about rapid building, right? In terms of rapid building a house, what do you think of the current infrastructure of code, standards, and regulatory mindsets? Because you said yourself, people don't ask why; they're just so willing to accept the way things are done. How do we change that?
You see a lot of advances in construction technology. There's been a lot of innovation. You and I were able to travel to Vegas to visit World of Concrete, where it was we're like kids in a candy store. All these different new technologies are being rolled out, and we're seeing like buildings being built with concrete in front of our eyes. It was pretty cool by robots. But at the end of the day, if you're looking at it from a business perspective, it might not be worth it to spend all this capital up front to buy this machine when you're not going to really reap the benefit of speed, because every 3 feet that you build, you got to wait for an inspector to come out and look at it. So, what I've done some basic research on this in this area, and, many jurisdictions are doing what they're called innovation zones, where the private entity who wants to try out new things that are, the code is silent on that, you're able to go in and work with the regulatory agency and kind of work in partnership, and they're inspecting as you go. They're on the job site regularly. But I think for us to really have innovation zones on Guam, it always comes down to manpower. And, when I talk about let's implement RPA, I'm not saying that let's go fire GovGuam employees. I'm saying we have a lot of great GovGuam employees who are doing 17 other things outside their basic job description, and that's why services are slow. If we can take those 17 other things off their plate and let them focus on their actual jobs, I think that's one way we can make government more efficient. There's ways to work smarter, not harder, and I think that's the goal here.
Well, if 5 of those 17 things are going to a file cabinet to pull a file out versus pushing a button on a screen and seeing the information firsthand, that seems like low-hanging fruit to me.
Correct. You try to get, I was a reporter for PNC at the time, and I remember doing a story where I had to go to Rev and Tax and get business licenses for entities that were doing illegal businesses on Guam. The employees there were great. They were willing to help me, but the process just took so long because it was in a filing cabinet somewhere that somebody had to go look for. Imagine if we can just Control F and pull it up, but it's a lot easier than spending 3 hours combing through records.
Right, but then again, it's not even the legacy records is we're onboarding continually, manually, paper-based versus making the shift now, so at least we can use the data moving forward. I was applying for, if you go for a business license, you still write your name down on a piece of paper. Everything with a lot of the most significant agencies that are the most significant with onboarding records starts with a piece of paper. And that piece of paper effectively creates a manual process that has to be followed through the system and creates opportunities for misentry and messes up the data structure. So can you tell me about we talk about validating new technologies. What role can the university play in bringing these technologies to the market, broadening familiarity and showing people how it can be used in their day-to-day businesses?
I think, that to answer that question, there's a 2-part answer. While that is the end goal, I think, to be quite frank with you, I think we need to build capacity locally. And the university is really, at least with the School of Business and Public Admin under the leadership of Dean Jones and even President Enriquez, really doing our part and try to build that capacity. I know right now the university is trying to find some seed money for the A&E of a regional center for data training and tech and all that good stuff. The university was able to get I think $19 million to build it. They just need the initial money for A&E. But once we have centers like this, we can put people through the program. You can build that pipeline. You look at the School of Engineering. Guam is short engineers. Just this last graduation, I think we graduated about more than a dozen engineers, local sons and daughters who were able to get their engineering degrees right here at home. For a lot of people going off island, the cost is just too cost prohibitive. Being able to do it here, kind of builds that pipeline. Once we are able to generate the workforce, build up the workforce, you'll start seeing investors being more inclined to want to invest in Guam and do all kinds of high-tech developments here.
If we can get them to stay. You build capacity, but then the capacity, effectively will stay here until they get their MBA and then exit, right? When they're more marketable in a larger market.
Yes and no. If you can make looking at it from a business perspective, if you're able to make money here, you can pay your people. And it's part of the challenge on Guam is the cost of doing business is so high. The process of doing business is just so tedious.
Sure.
And I think if we can alleviate a lot of those obstacles by optimizing government, I think that's one part of the problem. It's not the solution, but it does make it a lot easier.
No, and the easy button does help. In terms of I have to do all these things, but now I'm getting 11 different answers if I want to open my business, and it's not consistency of message, and that creates like obstacles for me actually moving forward. And I make mistakes, and mistakes cost me time, and eventually I get frustrated, and I say, hey, I'll go someplace else. Right? So no, I agree. Structurally and systemically, that is a problem, and by fixing that will lead to marginal change. Chirag, with your position at UOG and your history with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs with the Taiwan government, and your interaction with the business community there, you're uniquely positioned to think about Guam's place in the region, not just from a policy lens, but from a geopolitical one, right? Just in terms of world structure and world events. So, what do you think is the view that Taiwan has of Guam as an investment in real estate or just like whatever industry?
That's a great question, Ryan. From my experience as a fellow with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Taiwan, I've been able to build relationships with the CEOs of some of Taiwan and the world's great companies, and we've maintained that relationship. Given the current geopolitical challenges, threats in the area, you see a increased interest of Taiwanese businessmen and women wanting to move to Guam, and they see Guam as it's a U.S. territory. We have U.S. laws, we have the protection of the U.S. flag, and so that's definitely an added incentive. Now with the direct flight from Taiwan, you see more and more added interest. Just the other day, I was having a great conversation with a CEO of a company who, they make $50 million in sales every month. And out of the blue, he reached out to me to ask about Headnote 3A. So there's, definitely an interest. And, I want to give a shout out to the president of the American State Officers Association, Mr. Felix Yen. He's Guam's representative. And, he's been doing a good job of advising business people in Taiwan about Guam. For a long time, there was always this, I've been to Taiwan many times, even before the fellowship. There was always this, we know about Guam. We see it's a nice place. We want to one day visit Guam. Now with the direct flight that we have, and there's talks about more flights from different parts of Taiwan to Guam, different cities. I think that's gaining a lot of traction within the businesses in Taiwan, and they really do see Guam as a strategic hub to invest in. It's a lot safer, and given their threats that they're dealing with, everybody's preparing for the worst, and Guam this is an opportunity for Guam.
Sure, but I will say, like, again, we come up the issue. It's hard to do business here, and those players come in, and these are the guys who build hotels, they build retail centers, they build multi-million-dollar projects, right? High rises, and their investment horizon and scope carries across, it's global, it's not regional. In these conversations, what we found is a lot of people do business here because it's close, because they have experience with Guam in the past. And so it's cyclical and it's circular in a way. But how do you bring confidence? How do you breed confidence when, they want to come here, but then, okay, there's all these obstacles to doing business and there's no real data that I can use to really action my investment versus other markets where that data is readily available?
Just listening to your thoughts, I realized to add to my long list of things that I have on my resume over these last couple weeks, I've been pretty much a customer service operator for the government of Guam. We've had a lot of just random inquiries to the Regional Center for Public Policy about, hey, can you tell us a little bit more about the laws of Guam? Or, hey, I found you on LinkedIn. you did this fellowship in Taiwan. You're a graduate of this U.S. government fellowship. You worked in the legislature. You're now in teaching at the School of Business and Public Admin. How can you advise us with X, Y, and Z? Or where do I find this, and that? You're right. There's definitely interest, but I think, we need to make it more, our front door needs to be more welcoming.
Yes.
And, it's not a front door in its literal sense, but I think Gita has done a decent job at putting information out there. I'm able to, when people ask these questions, I lead them back to Gita's website. And then after they're done reviewing it, their next question is, hey, all right, so who do I talk to? Just knowing the right people, I'm able to build those connections. But I think that of all things is what the government of Guam as a whole, in partnership with organizations like yours, with Pinpoint, with the Chamber of Commerce, that's something we all just got to get together and figure out what's the best way to do it.
I agree, and we all have to be on the same page, and the messaging has to be consistent and aligned. That's important, because otherwise we look like jackasses. Yeah.
Back in the day, I don't know if it's still on the Department of Interior's website, but there used to be a document on there called Guam Economic Outlook. I think it was first done in 2008, and then it was updated in 2012. But in my opinion, that was like the best go-to guide of, hey, you want to start a business on Guam? Here's everything you need to know. Maybe, we go back and look at that old document and create something to reflect, the current laws and whatever changes have been done. And if the government doesn't want to do it, that does not mean academia or the private sector, hey, we can do that ourselves.
Well, there's the Guam Development Handbook that's been pretty successful and just stating the process and understanding. So it wouldn't be so hard to develop a more comprehensive or a specific guide for every industry, in terms of pipelines and pathways. So absolutely, I think it's a great idea. And so in closing, can you tell me what signal you think, whether it's regulatory reform, investment incentive, or just like a shift in the idea of governance and how we deploy that, what do you think would be the most significant thing that would signal Guam is ready to responsibly absorb investment from big players out of Taiwan?
I think the first step is making that front door just a lot more accessible. You take a foreign business person who has, a lot of money they want to invest, and you send them to Rev and Tax. I think that in and of itself is a nightmare. And nothing against the employees there. I had questions with how to file my GRT online. I went there, and the people there were very helpful. But, we also have to understand that trends are shifting. Everything's not really brick and mortar anymore. We need to make the front door, the digital front door, more welcoming, make it more accessible. For me to even go to Rev and Tax, finding the time to do that took a couple of days in and of itself. But if I can go online and figure out, how do I FAQs or chat with the live person, things like that, little things, I think that would make a more significant impact. And, I'm saying this because, with my background in the legislature and understanding Guam's laws, I think the laws right now and the investment incentives on the books, the QC programs that we have, I think there's a lot of incentives. It's how do you apply to take advantage of that? That's where it gets a little bit tricky. And then, I was talking to somebody who did the Destino program at Gita. They won, they got it. But from the announcement of, that they received, that they won the grant, I think, to the final stages, it took over 100 days. And as you know, these last 100 days, as it relates to trade and all that stuff, has been quite nerve-wracking. So, you come up with the business plan and you say, all right, this is how much it's going to cost. This is how much I, anticipate to profit. But then you're waiting over 100 days for paperwork to come through so you can start your business. Meanwhile, there's a trade war going on. There's all kinds of geopolitical challenges going on. Being able to streamline process for government, I think that is what we need to do to show that we are ready to welcome investment.
No, I agree. And I think streamlining is definitely important. And I think um, small, low-hanging fruit things like, hey, let's scan documents, let's onboard them digitally, so we don't perpetuate the problem that we're already in. And so, in the asking why, Chirag, it's like, why are we continuing to do the stuff that we know is just going to create more?
No, and imagine if I'm a realtor, right, and I need information about a property. It's easier for me to call you to have you pull it up on your platform than sending somebody to land management to figure it out.
That's why we built it.
Why is it that the private sector has to fork out that money, that capital, to provide the service that otherwise everybody on Guam could benefit from? Sure. That makes no sense.
Well, so, and I'll push back on that, and I appreciate what you're saying, right? But the reason why it makes the most sense for me is because the government is bad at it. The government will never be good at pushing technology. They'll be good at creating systems where good technology can be invented and deployed and perpetuated, but with procurement and all the obstacles and the structures that exist, it doesn't move agilely. And that's where if the government's going to be involved in technology, it needs to be a public-private partnership, but it needs to be a public-private partnership with the stakeholders who the data is important to and who it matters for, and they're decisioning the policy as well.
Well, I think also there's this, given the history of the government of Guam and public perception, right? There's also this, we're afraid of change, but we're also afraid of change in a sense that we're afraid that if change is trying to be implemented, the next question on everybody's mind is, all right, who is it going to benefit? We got to get out of that mindset. We need to be afraid. We need to be willing to take leaps of faith and improve government. But if we're just afraid because, somebody's probably going to line their pocket somewhere, and that's why we're not going to change anything, and that's why we're going to stick with the status quo, that's just like the wrong mindset.
No, and then in the spirit of siloing too, a lot of the agencies specifically want to retain the information because they can monetize the information and create better systems and tools and service in terms of that mentality, right? Even though that's not really like what we should be doing because it's siloed, it should be one government and aligned. But I understand the thought process, and I appreciate like you said, there's great employees there who do like a ton of work.
I want to talk about one of the bills that I'm glad to have worked on with a good friend of mine who just passed away, Chris Carrillo. When he was running the Medicare office, he was able to we just needed a change in procurement law to allow the Division of Public Welfare and Public Health to do like a group procurement with I can't remember which state, Alabama, Arkansas, someplace out there, right? They were not going to charge us any money because we were just so small compared to like how big they are. But we were able to use their platform for Medicaid at little to no cost. At the same time, providers would love it because they get to get paid right away.
Yes.
It would streamline all of this. To change procurement law to allow group procurement with a different state, it was pulling teeth. Because when the bill went through the session floor, the first question that was asked was, all right, Senator, who in your family is going to benefit from this? And we're like, no, nobody's making any money. This is literally free for us. They're letting us use it. We just have to legally get on that contract. And the intention of that bill was just helping our vulnerable people get access to health care and also make it so that doctors and providers are willing to see them in larger volumes because they know they can get paid in a more timely fashion rather than the old paper method. But that narrative, that mindset, we just really need to get out of it. We got to be afraid. We can't be afraid of, what we don't know, and we got to be willing to dream, to take chances, to take leaps of faith.
And hold people accountable.
Yes, most definitely. Our Attorney General is doing his job, as you may be aware, if you are in a position of public trust and you jeopardize public trust, honestly, you have no role in public service.
Yes, I agree. Well, Chirag, I appreciate your time and your insight. It's been really great to have this conversation with you, and I invite you to come back. Let's troll.
All right, let's do it.
All right, man. Take care.
All right.
think we're going to have Chirag back a few times. He brings the heat and the insight, and he's not really scared to take shots, which is, maybe we need some more of that in the market. Maybe we need more people not afraid to speak up. Culturally, we're always so silent, but there are real problems that need solutions that require a voice. So I encourage you to speak and to bring your ideas and your opinions to our channels and to the conversation place, I guess. But in all of it, we're here with you, bringing good data to the table. Like, subscribe, share any of our content. We greatly appreciate it. Give us a comment. Give us a question about a topic you want to find out about, and we'll dig for you here on Data Points.